So this is case number Z479, the appeal by Woodstock Land Conservancy from Building Inspector Warren Touch, June 8, 2026, determination regarding the property off Ruby Roads and Eastwood Drive, zone R60. Let me say where we are in the process. This board held a hearing on July 13th. Both parties were represented by counsel and presented. The building inspector explained his determination. Members of the public who were here were permitted to speak, and several did. This board closed the hearing and held the record open for 30 days of written comment. That period closes today. Every comment was received in this record, and every member has had access to all written comments. Tonight we'll hear a brief argument from counsel. They'll deliberate and decide. The question before us is narrow, under section 190-16A, interpreting our zoning code rests solely with this board. The only question is whether the building inspector correctly determined that the 2,500 square foot threshold does not require adding together the floor areas of multiple future homes on separate lots in a subdivision. We're not reviewing the subdivision, we're not doing site plan review, not doing environmental review, not deciding whether this project gets built. Those are before the planning board and other agencies, and there will be public comment there. Public comment doesn't stop. The other agencies will. There's going to be multiple opportunities for everybody to get their voice. Okay, so I guess we'll start with counsel. Mrs. Britton.
Well, hi everyone, thanks for letting me speak. I'm Cassandra Britton from Northern Housing Shaw Caldor, and I'm here on behalf of my client, the Woodstock Land Conservancy. I would just like to address a few issues raised during the July 13th Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, and place some serious procedural defects that require the ZBA to schedule and properly notice a new hearing on the record. A letter has been submitted today and handed out to you prior to this meeting that has case law as well as statutory citations which expand on my argument. For the sake of time, I will just summarize a few key points. However, I urge the board to carefully review the cases cited which support my argument. During the July 13, 2026 meeting, there appeared to be some confusion regarding the actual question before the board. A member of the board asked whether the ZBA had authority to determine if the town board can review this project. The answer is yes. My client and the public are both seeking an interpretation that would require our large-scale projects to be reviewed by the town board, consistent with the plain language of the zoning law. If the ZBA agrees with the appeal, the project would be reviewed by the town board. That is the consequence. The July 13th meeting deprived the applicant and the public of the right to procedural due process. A public hearing is required by law. Town law requires the ZBA to hold a public hearing. There is no state law, local law, or case law for the ZBA's position that a public hearing is not required. In fact, Town of Ulster Code Section 191.3, which establishes order of business at a regular ZBA meeting, lists public hearings among the proceedings. Other provisions refer to public hearing and attendance. The code does not differentiate from the procedure of a hearing in which the public may be excluded, and another called public hearing where the public may speak. Rather, it uses the two phrases interchangeably to describe the same proceeding. Thus, where a hearing is where the public is given an opportunity to speak is always required. Additionally, section 191-5C of the Town of Ulster Code regarding meeting states appeals may be amended 15 days prior to the public hearing. This implies appeals, which is what this is for ZBA, require the public to speak in adequate notice. A plain reading of the town law likewise supports the notion that a public hearing requires participation. The opportunity to comment is even more important because an interpretation of a zoning law is not limited to a single project, but applies to review of projects throughout the town thereafter. An interpretation which eliminates the public participation from the appeal process is contrary to published law. Because this hearing was not properly noticed and the public was told not to speak, the ZBA failed to hold a public hearing. I have provided a few cases which expand on this procedural defect there in the writing, which all support the proposition that a public hearing is required by town law, and that this hearing requires public participation and proper notice. A hearing held without meaningful opportunity for public participation does not satisfy the requirements for a public hearing under Town Law 67A and Town Law Chapter 191. Not only was a hearing not held, the notice for the public hearing was also insufficient. It does not appear the public notice was published in both of the town's official newspapers as required by law. Town Code 191-6 requires the notice of the hearing to be published in the official town newspaper. At the reorg meeting on January 1st, 2026, the town board designated 2 papers, the Hudson Valley one and the Daily Freeman, for these notices to be published in. You have to publish in both notices because it's not fair to make the public, subscribe to 2 different papers which have political agendas. So by only publishing in one, you're subscribing to a specific political agenda. Moreover, the notice itself did not state that the meeting would be a public hearing. Rather, it said the ZBA will hold a hearing. It also did not state members of the public would be able to speak and participate. The language in the hearing notice misled the public, which foregoed their attendance. The failure to properly notice the public hearing is a fatal procedural defect. A member of the public seeking to attend this would have had to know that the public hearing was occurring, even though 1, the agenda was not identified as a public hearing on the July 13th meeting agenda. It was instead placed under new business. No public hearing notice was published on the town's website and social media. Notice of the public hearing was not published in both of the town's official newspapers. And the notice published did not state the public would have a right to speak at the meeting. Lastly, written comments do not cure this notice and procedural defect. Procedural due process requires an opportunity to be heard in a meaningful manner at a meaningful time. The requirement is not satisfied by simply allowing the public to submit comments past the date of an improperly noticed hearing. Town Law 267A permits any party to appear in person. This clearly requires the ZBA to provide an opportunity for live in-person testimony at a public hearing. New York courts have ruled written comments may supplement a properly conducted public hearing, but do not cure a defect in the opportunity to participate in the hearing itself. This is particularly true where the board first formally advised the public that oral comments would not be accepted. As written submissions do not provide the same opportunity to respond to statements made during the public hearing, such as addressing board member questions, clarifying factual issues in real time, and participating in the process as the hearing unfolds. More importantly, written submissions cannot restore an opportunity of those members in public who may have been left, remained silent, or otherwise declined to participate because the board had expressly stated public comment would not be accepted. The sequence of events, therefore, is critical. The board first closed the door to public participation, recognized the resulting confusion, and then closed the oral hearing rather than continuing it, providing a clear opportunity for all interested members of the public to be heard. The subsequent acceptance of written comments does not cure this initial defect. In summary, the July 13th proceeding did not constitute a public hearing as required by New York Town Law 267A. When the members of the public were finally allowed to comment, they did so without an opportunity to prepare remarks, as limited notice of the hearing was published or posted in advance of the meeting, rendering them unable to provide meaningful and prepared testimony. The ZBA's initial announcement that the public comment would not be permitted during the meeting created substantial confusion, and the subsequent decision to close the oral testimony portion of the public hearing and accept only written comments did not cure that defect. The ZBA, therefore, must schedule a public hearing upon a legally sufficient notice to the public prior to making any decision tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Glad.
Good evening, Al Glad from the law firm of Cuddy & Fader on behalf of.
Do you mind speaking closer to the mic?
On behalf of the property owner, that is the subject of this appeal. So we had made a brief supplemental submission to the board on August 10th. And we just wanted to provide more support for the building inspector's determination that this application is properly in front of just the planning board. First, we went through meeting minutes for the 2020s. And every major subdivision application that we were able to locate did not require site plan approval from the town board. So to now decide that it would be a drastic departure from how the town has processed its applications historically. But also, and more importantly, we provided additional support in your site plan review code. I printed out and tabbed the relevant sections, which I'll run you through right now. So if you flip to the second page, the orange tab, you'll see the highlighted language. So this is section 145-5, subsection B, exceptions, which says this chapter, i.e. the site plan review law, will not apply to a single-family residence situated on a lot which was approved by the planning board. And that is exactly the application that is before the planning board at this time. And if you're gonna play devil's advocate and ask the question, oh, well, does that only apply to existing lots? No, because if you look at the exception below that, that explicitly also includes an exemption for lots that pre-exist the town regulations. So I think that is a clear indication that this exception, B1, applies to active applications because there is an exception for active applications and for lots that already exist. So I think this is a pretty open and shut case. There's a clear exception for the project from town board review, and that's basically the summary of our submission. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we know what Warren's already ruled that he believes, that the zoning code is, already set, right? We don't have to- So, next up.
Thank you, Chair. Just some brief comments for the board members. I reviewed all the correspondence from members of the public, from counsel for the developer, counsel for the applicant, for the appellant today, including the supplemental submission just received today, including its arguments concerning the July 13th hearing. I do not agree that this board is legally required to schedule and notice a new hearing. It's important to identify precisely what is before the zoning board. This is not an application for an area variance, a use variance, site plan approval, or subdivision approval. It is an administrative appeal from a determination and interpretation made by the building inspector. Town Code Section 191-5, consistent with Town Law Section 267A, specifically authorizes the zoning board to hear and decide appeals from an order, requirement, decision, interpretation, or determination of the administrative officer charged with enforcing the zoning law. Town Law 267A7 requires public notice of the hearing and provides that upon the hearing, any party may appear in person by agent or by attorney. Similarly, Section 191-6 of the Town Code establishes the procedure for the hearing, including presentation of the case, presentation of the opposing arguments, and rebuttal by both sides. Nothing in those provisions expressly requires a separate general public comment period in an administrative appeal of the building inspector's interpretation. The fact that Chapter 191 elsewhere refers to such proceedings as public hearings does not transform this quasi-judicial administrative appeal into a legislative public hearing for which every member of the general public must be afforded an independent right to speak. The required hearing of this appeal was publicly noticed in the Daily Freeman, the official newspaper of the town, and a newspaper of general circulation in the town. And the published notice identified the property, the determination being appealed, the specific code interpretation at issue, and the date, time, and place of the hearing. The appellant was present and was afforded the opportunity to present their position, and the developer was afforded the opportunity to respond. In addition, although I do not believe this separate general public comment period was required for this appeal, your board nevertheless permitted additional oral comments from the public and kept the record open for written submissions through the date of today's meeting, including the extensive materials that are now before your board. Accordingly, the parties have had a full opportunity to present their positions, and the board has received and considered substantial additional input from the public. In my opinion, nothing in the August 12th submission requires this board to begin the hearing process again, and the board will proceed tonight to determine the narrow question before you, whether the building inspector's June 8th interpretation and determination should be affirmed or reversed.
Thank you. Okay, so, last time we were here, the board made a decision to close the public hearing, but we left the record open so folks could, do write-ins. That closes today, and we are not going to reopen the public hearing, comment. So, what's left is the question of, the building inspector, Mr. Warren, was correct in his determination that the 2,500 square foot threshold does not require adding together the floor areas of multiple future homes on separate lots in a subdivision. Does anybody on the board have any questions, or is there anything you would like to say, or any concerns? Okay. So just so I'm clear, how, on section 145-5, section D1 says that the chart doesn't apply to single-family homes on lots approved under town law S-276. These are subdivision lots. How do you add up the floor area of buildings the chapter doesn't cover? How would you?
So I think part of it is, I think that, one, those are pre-approved lots, but it's not pre-approved, one. Two, I believe that the rec center, in addition to the single-family homes, is what's triggering the review. And then there were original duplexes, which I understand have changed, but it was like, this was written before the change, or I missed the change. So there were duplexes, which also would have triggered site plan. But I believe that because these aren't pre-approved lots, that most large subdivisions do have some sort of site plan when they have amenities and roads. This is not just, if this was a 3-lot subdivision, I don't believe that it would be the same as one with a large, it's basically it's a large scale project, and that's what triggered it. And last night before the board, the planning board did refer only 4 townhomes, which are on one lot, but it's a smaller project, to the town board for that review, but not this large subdivision with amenities. I think that's what I'm struggling with for the town code.
Make it make
Chair,
sense.
that was because of the zoning. The duplexes or triplexes were not allowed in that zoning district. This is an R60 zone, single-family homes are permitted by right. I understand the issue that you're raising, and that goes to a zoning issue and not what's narrowly before this board. But I understand where you're coming from.
I will say, and I'm sure you drafted the resolution, it was well drafted, it did cite the criteria though, it did cite special permit, and it did cite the criteria of the 2,500 square foot threshold. And I just wanna point out that those are just 4 homes. Now we're looking at, a large lot with amenities, so it's not like this is a 3-lot subdivision. So I believe if it's, just why do 4 homes have to be reviewed, but not 30 with amenities? I think that's what I struggle with when reading the zoning code. It seems arbitrary to use some but not others.
Then the town board should take some action to clarify this in the future. But what is before the board right now is the current code as it exists, not how we wish it to exist.
And I believe there's evidence that would suggest, in my initial submission, that would suggest that you can make that determination. And, and if the town board agrees that it's an issue, they could of course redraft the zoning. But until then, all these large projects, like even 100-lot subdivisions with large complexes of amenities are not gonna be reviewed by the town board, when it literally says in your town code, that in your zoning code, that large scale development should be reviewed by the town board. And I just think that's contrary to the purpose of the zoning, to allow these large scale developments to not be reviewed by the town board level.
Thank you. Would you like to rebuttal?
Sure, thank you for the opportunity. So, the recommended for this project is 2,400 square feet, and it is getting site plan review from the planning. So it's subject to the same site plan approval standards that the town board will be reviewing, it's just the planning board conducting that review. And for example, if there is a 100-lot subdivision with a lot bigger amenities, if they exceed that 2,500 square foot threshold, then they would get site plan from the town board, and the planning board would be doing the subdivision review. So, and also just to clarify one point, too, that council mentioned, this 145-5B exception, it's not just for pre-approved lots, because that's what exception 2 accounts for, so it wouldn't make sense to have 2 exceptions for the same point. So I think that one exception is properly read as being for active and pending applications.
Thank you. Okay, I think the board is satisfied. Have you heard enough? So we don't have any other questions, Rich, and you have anybody, Megan, we're good? Okay, so council has drafted a resolution. Is that,
Yeah, I have drafted a resolution. I'd like to know
with the board?
what you would like to do. If you would like to affirm the building inspector's decision and dismiss the appeal,
We'll put that up to a vote, and then I think we'll see what the stand is. So, I'll entertain a motion on case Z 479, that this board affirms determination, and the town council will write the decision to match whatever we decide. That Mr. Tutt's determination that the 2,500 square foot threshold does not require adding together the floor areas of multiple future homes on separate lots and subdivisions. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Warren, can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Higgins?
Yes.
Chairman Reggino?
Yes. Okay, so that closes. Now, the opportunity for you guys to speak is not closed. That's gonna continue. You've got other boards and these things. We all read everything you wrote to us. I promise you, I spent hours reading this stuff. So, this is a very narrow part of this right here. And you know, we're volunteers. We're not politicians and we're not lawyers.
Well,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? We're just
That's
doing
the whole
best
point.
we can.
You're volunteers.
So, I appreciate you guys and I appreciate your passion for it. I really do. In terms of this close. But now, I will read the resolution. Right?
why don't I read it be resolved and you ratify it with a vote?
Okay.
Be resolved, the zoning board determines that its consideration and determination of the present administrative appeal constitutes a type 2 action pursuant to 6 NYCR 617.5, because the action consists of the interpretation of an existing code, rule, or regulation, and therefore no further review or determination of significance under seeker is required with respect to this appeal. Resolved, the foregoing type 2 determination relates solely to the zoning board of appeals interpretation of chapter 145 of the town code, and determination of this appeal should not be construed as a secret determination concerning the underlying unit development subdivision application. Resolved that the appeal of Woodstock Land Conservancy is hereby denied, and is further resolved that the June 8, 2026 determination of the town of Ulster building inspector is hereby affirmed, and is further resolved that the zoning board of appeals determines that section 145 2A2 of the code of the town of Ulster does not require the aggregation of the gross floor areas of multiple proposed residences located on separate lots within the subdivision for purposes of determining whether the 2,500 square foot threshold has been exceeded, and it's further resolved that the zoning board of appeals determines that the proposed unit development subdivision does not require town board site plan review solely because the cumulative gross floor area of future residences may exceed 2,500 square feet. And it's further resolved that this decision is limited to the interpretation of chapter 145 presented in this appeal, and shall not be construed as a determination by the zoning board of appeals concerning the adequacy of the planning board's seeker review, alleged segmentation, the environmental impacts of the proposed project, or the ultimate merits of the pending subdivision application. Give you a public.
Can I get a motion to accept town council's resolution?
I make a motion to accept the resolution.
I second it.
Warren, can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Higgins?
Yes.
Chairman Reggino?
Yes. All right, that closes. Thank you, thank you.